everyone. It's me, Esther Gaines, and I'm back with our guest for the Aiding Archers series. I'm really excited about tonight, and I hope you've been tuning in. If not, make sure you hit that subscribe button below so that you can follow us for the entire month of August in terms of what we have to offer during this really unprecedented time for parents and guardians alike. The reason why I started this series was because there's so much going on in the educational spectrum. There's so much going on in the world. And I wanted to bring on voices of people who had so much wisdom to give. That's based upon Hebrews 13 and 16 that says, do not forget to do good and to share with others, for with such sacrifices God is pleased. And these people have such an amazing heart and just desire to help others. And so I'm really excited about why they're here. Also, archers. Psalms 127:4 says, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. If you are a parent or a guardian, or if you have contact or accountability or responsibility of children, you are that warrior, you are that archer. And it's our goal and our responsibility to aim them well in the midst of pandemics, right? So on tonight, I am so very pleased to introduce you all to Miss Leslie Hardy. And she is, I don't know, I've known her for a while, but not directly. She knows, like, our families know each other very well. And we actually, she interviewed me on her podcast, which I'm going to ask her, talk about later. And what her role is and what she does. She's the owner of Leslie M. Hardy Counseling, Coaching, and Consulting. And she's accomplished so much. She's a 2-time published Amazon best-selling author, founder and host of the live show Life Perspectives with Leslie, which is what I was able to be a part of. And it was so good. Like, she is the reason why I'm doing this. I'm going to just make that clear. Like, oh my gosh, Leslie, you inspired me. I was like, you know what? I can do it.
Yes,
I'm trying to figure out all the technical stuff. She is a brand ambassador for Unstoppable Black Women, a licensed clinical social worker in North Carolina and Georgia, a board-approved clinical supervisor, a licensed clinical addiction specialist, certified inner healing coach, and marriage relationship educator. If you heard me say that, I need you to go ahead and get all your friends, link to all of your friends, because all of them fit into some way or another of needing those services. And she's gonna give us more information about that later. A couple of things that she likes to do, which I was like, yep, we have kindred spirit. She likes to dance. She likes to read, road trips, musicals. She is like me too, a natural introvert. Although people say like I'm not, but I really am. Y'all be stressing me too much. So I want to introduce to you guys and give the floor to Miss Leslie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Esther, for inviting me to share in this platform and in this discussion. Much needed in these unprecedented times like you said. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes. So tell me, how long have you been involved with the work that you do, specifically, I guess, clinical?
Okay. Yeah. So over 25 years. I know it doesn't look like it, right?
From like where?
Over 25 years. Graduated from graduate school in like 94 and went straight into the clinical field and been working there ever since.
Wow. Why did you decide to go in that direction?
Honestly, I think that was just God's plan for me, honestly, but just the chart of my own life, having gone through certain things in my life earlier in childhood and then coming up through early adulthood, having some challenges I had to work through myself, and it just really increased my capacity to want to help other people. So I really consider myself an advocate now for, the disadvantaged, those who are just at a disadvantage, who are just maybe having some unfortunate times in life. But we all need help at some point. And I know when I needed help in my life and there were those key people that were there for me, it really made a difference.
I totally understand. I was talking to my mother and I was having a moment. I was like, I want another baby. She was like, no. And I was like, I want a puppy. She was like, where are we going with this? I was like, I think I want to go back to school for like counseling or therapy. And she was like, well, that's
She's like, "You onto something there, huh?"
yes. But I totally understand that the mindset of looking back at your personal experiences and connecting those to key people who helped you and that stirring up this desire to also be an advocate and help other people. So thank you for answering the call for
Yes,
sure.
yes, absolutely. I love it. I love it.
So we have, and it's so funny as I'm doing this interview, I'm like, I feel like she asked me the same question.
Probably did.
But we have a pandemic, we have social injustice, and then we have a new school year.
Yes.
Literally, some kids have already started, some will start like in 2 weeks or a week.
Hmm.
And parents are still, there are essential workers still working outside the home. And you have parents still working either part-time or full-time from home. And now, at least where we live, which you are in North Carolina, correct?
Yes.
Where we live, our county, all the kids are at home, at least for the first 9 weeks, I believe, or six
Hmm.
weeks. So I'm thinking about parents and I'm thinking about mental capacity and emotional stability. Um, and you've probably seen this in your line of work since March. So could you just tell me like what are 1 to 3 significant things that you've seen as a therapist as this pandemic has progressed and how have you been able to handle
Well, one thing that I've definitely seen, Esther, is that more people are now more aware of the need for counseling and therapy, and they're much more accepting of it. Whereas before, people may have discounted the need for it or even felt like there was some stigma attached to it. But we're in unprecedented times where nobody's ever really navigated this space that we're in. We're all finding ourselves having different challenges. And so people's level of anxiety has heightened. Symptoms of depression have been more prevalent amongst the people as well. And a lot of people have been saying and coming to me just expressing this lack of focus and direction, not quite being able to figure out how to navigate in this space because it's something that we've never experienced before. You know, I was talking on another show a couple of months ago. We were talking about grief and loss. And so what we're actually experiencing right now is a country, a pandemic of that even, because in so many different ways, everybody has been impacted, some more than others. And we've all experienced some sense of loss, which can
it?
then lead to grief.
That makes a lot of sense. We're like, so it's like we're grieving what we used to have in a
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, some people, and the way I talk about it is it can be an actual loss, it could be a symbolic loss, or it can be a psychological loss. But we all have experienced some aspect of loss. And, you know, some people have actually experienced the physical loss of a loved one, but we all have experienced some type of symbolic loss, even in our autonomy, you know, our sense of safety.
Mhm.
You know, there are various types of losses. Yeah.
Wow. Have you seen like a particular age group or a particular profession of people like that has become an, uh, what am I trying to say? They are in need more right now.
You know, interestingly, I was having a conversation with a colleague just yesterday, and I was sharing with him that I've noticed I've had an increase of the millennial age group, honestly. You know, these young adults who are in this space where most of them are not in their parents' home anymore. And like I said, we're in this space where we've never navigated this. And so, just in the stage of life where they're really kind of getting on their own, getting their own footing, and starting their own individual lives, they're like having to reset. You know, loss of income, loss of a lot of things. And so, a lot of my new clients and just the conversation amongst my colleagues has been really more of the millennial and then their parents' age group as well, because you have generations of
Mhm.
people now having to care for each other in different ways. It's really kind of complicated. It's complicated how we live.
I could definitely see that. I'm thinking about my family and like, Lord bless my mama and my daddy because they have what would have been a freshman. I mean, she is a freshman in college, but she's not leaving. And
Mhm.
then for a moment, we thought my middle sister was going to have to come home for a season. And I was like, oh, no, that's not going to work. Because she's been gone for a minute and her personality is just lovely. Like, it's not bad, but it's just like my sister, when she wants what she wants, she goes after it. Like, she's very just strong willed, which is all of us, honestly. Um,
Uh-huh.
and so I was just thinking about my parents, like, wait a minute, they were expected to be empty nesters, technically.
Mm-hmm.
Possibility that one may come home and the other one's here, which I think they've done well. They've done really well just navigating through that. Thankfully, it worked out for my middle sister. But I could not imagine being at that age and having to not only be concerned about your health, they're not old. Let me stop. I'm gonna get me. Um, but just being older, being concerned about your health, and then realizing like, oh, I'm concerned about my child because her income changed. I'm just concerned about this child. I
Mm-hmm.
want to send him to college, but then that's probably not good.
Right.
Stressful.
Very, very, on all levels. Thinking about the disappointment for those young people who were looking forward to going to college and
Mm,
transitioning out, that's a huge disappointment for them because that's like this celebratory milestone that we all look forward to, even if we're not going to college. When you graduate high school and, this year class wasn't able to have the traditional ceremonial, graduation. So that was a sense of loss for them. So it's just kind of been compounded across all the different phases of life for the different generations, honestly.
yeah, yeah. So that makes me think about the next question is there are caretakers, whether they have little ones or high schoolers or middle schoolers, or they have college young adults who have never considered counseling, didn't really see the need, have been doing life. And I'm curious from you, like, for those who have never considered therapy or counseling for themselves, what are a few signs that they should probably look for or think about and be like, well, maybe I do need it?
Honestly, now, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a counselor. I've had counseling myself, right? Even before I became a counselor. But really, the fact that we all are existing in this time, during the time of this pandemic, such an unprecedented time where there's such a need for more structure and direction, just kind of nationally on down. You can't really determine and track where you need to go if you're not sure what's happening. A lot of people have lost income. And so that's a concern, a real tangible concern for people when you don't have the means to take care of yourself, when you want to take care of yourself and you can't. And so just the fact that we are existing in this time, an indicator that you probably could benefit from some mental counseling. And I really think about it like, your mind, your thought life, how you process what's going on, really kind of, it's a kind of like a precursor to how you emotionally deal with it. So what you're thinking about has a lot to do with what emotions come about as a result of that. If you feel like you're just kind of helpless, then that's going to create a certain, actions. If you feel like, well, I have faith that this is going to get better, and I'm sure we all have a measure of faith. We all have a measure of faith. Um,
Right.
but just kind of depending on how you're thinking about what you're experiencing determines, kind of how well you cope with it. So the very fact that you're existing, however well you feel like you're doing, you could benefit from it. You may be experiencing fatigue. You may be experiencing, again, like I mentioned before, just a loss of focus and direction, not quite sure what to do. Part of that is because of a lack of direction that you're looking for outside of ourselves, from the structures, the schools, the state, the government, and all of that. But also, you may have noticed that, your sleeping is off. Your
Mm,
appetite may not be the same, and all of these could be symptoms of things that indicate, well, you might need some help in coping and learning different strategies. You may just have a general sense of sadness because of the loss of this quote unquote stability and security that we felt 4 or 5 months ago. You know, a lot of people tend to isolate. So if you find yourself becoming more withdrawn, isolated, that could be an indicator that maybe you could need some additional support. And just, generally an overall sense of hopelessness and even anger. A lot of people may feel anger at what's going on because there's such a sense of a lack of control that we have of what's happening around us. And some people may feel like it's happening to them.
Oh my word. Honestly, transparently, I haven't had a session in a while. And I think because we had come up with a new plan, and I'm like, well, I know I'm calling tomorrow. So
Yeah.
but I found myself in the midst of transitioning. So I did not even connect the loss of structure to like thought process and emotions, but that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Like structure does provide guidance. And I think about parents with kids, like have those boundaries, it does create a path or a guideline for them. But as adults, I think I never thought about that. And I think for me, it's a little different because I am a homeschooler and I am an entrepreneur. But I still long for structure, but it's like, wait a minute, I create the structure. Oh, how that's gonna work. That's a really good point.
Yep, we all need structure. And a lot of times we have it built in for us, so we don't have to be as conscious of the thought about it. And in our homes, we tend to have our own measure of structure. But when you're at home, as long as we've been at home, those boundaries, those guidelines tend to get a bit relaxed, and you can find yourself like with no structure anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you suggest like schedule or like maybe not schedules, but like Mondays, I'm gonna watch this. Tuesday, I'm gonna go walking. I don't know. Something?
Well, I do recommend that we establish and keep a routine about our life. It doesn't have to be regimented, but we can have a routine where, there's certain things you're going to do every week. And so if you put more structure around it, and you can really see where your time is going. But sometimes we can be existing up, doing all day. And at the end of the day, we look back and we were like, what did I accomplish? What did I do?
My bathroom.
Talking to myself too, but for those who've actually been fortunate enough to be able to work from home, that provides some structure for them. And that can be a good thing or not so good thing when you have children at home, especially if you have younger children at home and having to navigate them and providing structure for them in the midst of you're trying to keep structure working. So like I said, it is truly a time where we all need each other, and we need to find ways to support each other however we may be able to.
Very good point. Very good point. I had a meeting last night, and I was looking at a survey, and that was one of the big things for this school year is, okay, schools are closed. We have virtual academy or, school online. But what can churches do? What can nonprofits provide in terms of space? What can homeschool families even do for two working from home parents, within, the guidelines and what they feel comfortable with? And so that's been my challenge is like, okay, Esther, what can you do? But also know yourself. Know yourself, which I think that's a good segue into the next question. You do have parents. You have parents who are working from home, or one spouse is working from home, or a single parent, whatever the case may be, and they have been in a regimen of, meeting with a therapist on a regular basis, all of that. So, and they have like specific mental or emotional needs, health issues, which can vary, we know, or better than me, from here to there. And so, what are 2 to 3 things for those parents, those caretakers? I don't want to dismiss them, guardians, that they can do for themselves to prepare for school, because that's going to be a lot to juggle. Like my, what do you call it? What are your sessions online called?
Telehealth sessions?
Yes, so juggling, okay, I do my telehealth sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Oh, you
Mhm.
have virtual academy live lessons at this time. Like, what do you suggest those individuals do?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I got a phone call from a friend of mine who she and her husband are both having to work outside the home. And they have a middle schooler who's fairly responsible, but still, there was a question of what do we do with her being at home and needing to, have virtual schooling and we can't be there. And so there are all different scenarios that parents are having to work out and juggle. I would say one of the first things to do is to empower yourself by knowing what is the plan, what is the school proposing to do, so you can know what the guidelines are that you have to work within. And then, the whole concept of, if possible, what I would call sharing the load with other parents who may be at home and maybe swapping off. Like maybe one day if the kids can go to school at your home, and then another day the kids are going to school in your friend's home, and that way no one family is having to do it all every day, all day. But really knowing what the plan is so that you can come up with a feasible plan in advance as much as possible. I won't be surprised at all if, once things get started, there needs to be some tweaking and adjustments with that, but having a plan can help ease the anxiety and the anticipation of what's going to happen, because chances are things are going to need to change. We're all figuring this out together. And so even for the parents, I would say allow yourself some grace. Allow
Mm,
yourself some grace to grow and to transition in this space. I applaud all the parents who have children who are having to figure this out. I have an adult child, so I'm not quite in this space anymore. But just allow yourself the space to do what you know to do now, and then tweak it as you need to. And definitely reach out and ask for help, ask for support, just like my friend did with me. She reached out and asked me for feedback so that she could just kind of have someone else to process it with. That's going to be key because two brains are better than one, right?
right.
And just not just two. You could share it with various people, because the other thing is parents are having children in all different age levels from elementary to high school. And, for the parents who are at home, in some regards, that could be an advantage because you're not necessarily having to figure out what to do with your children who are
Mhm.
younger, need to be at home. Um, and I don't know this, you may know this, Esther, if the school system actually has some programs in place to assist with that, to assist the parents who have elementary and middle school kids where they themselves, the parents have to work outside the home, but the kids are still expected to attend, virtual school. And so there are all kinds of dynamics. But I would say, we've all heard the slogan, knowledge is power. Where in this regard, it is empowering to have the knowledge of what to expect so that you can devise a plan. And then just give yourself grace and the flexibility to change your plan if and as needed as the weeks go on with the whole virtual schooling. And then be mindful, as caretakers, as parents, be mindful of your own emotional space and your own
Mhm.
emotional health. As caretakers, people can tend to be so focused on everyone else and they don't realize and they're not paying attention to what their own body is telling them. And the next thing they know, they're like a week or two down the road and they're not understanding why they're feeling physically and mentally the way that they are. So really being intentional to do a self-assessment, check in with yourself every day and a half or so. And just know getting started, it's okay. I am going to need to take a good 15 minutes throughout my day to just unplug, have my own personal timeout. The kids will be
Mommy's in timeout.
Right. Right. And it's not a punitive thing.
Oh, that is so, yes. I think I do that anyway. I think it's funny because I think E does it too. When
Mhm.
he
It's
gets
neat.
off of work, he's like, okay, I'm gonna be over here. I'm like, where is E at? It's been like 10 minutes.
It's needed. It really is. It really is.
I think that's really, you said so much and I was trying to like pull on one thing, but that's really good. The self-assessment.
Mhm.
Um, I'm in a space now kind of where you say like where you're at, where you're a week or so down the road and you're like, man, why do I physically feel this way? Why are my responses this way?
Mhm.
Um, and I think when I did my reassessment, I was just like, okay, 3 days off the grid, like no phone, phone off if you need me, you
Mhm.
have Eve's number, like, and that helped bring so much clarity and productivity. I was shocked. And
Absolutely.
I don't know if I could do that all the time, but I think it's definitely beneficial, even if it was like 12 hours or
Mhm.
5 hours. But
Mhm.
that self-assessment time, like, so you are out of order, like, what's going on? And just being still and praying and listening or playing music, it just
Mhm.
really was beneficial. I just need to, like you said, do that often because I
Right.
don't.
Yep. Yep. And be intentional about it. And if you have two parents in the home, or even older children, college age kids, um, even high schoolers, really sit down and be intentional with your family to say, hey, we are in unprecedented times, and it's important that we do this, and outline for them what this is, and make it normative so that it's not, seen as something wrong or taboo. No, it's actually something that's helpful and healthy to do. So set that expectation going into it so that everybody create an environment where when people aren't okay, they know it's okay to let you know, yeah, I'm not feeling okay right now. Can we talk, or what I need? And you can do the same thing.
So would that be equivalent to, like, say during the day, I don't know, it's a lot of emails and you need to make phone calls and the kids are whoever's at home is like, "Ma," or so and so, like, I need is would me saying or someone saying like, "Okay, mommy is unavailable for the next 10 minutes," okay? Or is that the same thing?
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. You can absolutely do that. And it's okay. One of the things I share with parents often is, especially if you have younger children, if you can give the analogy with your younger children to something that they can relate to, which is typically school, and give them that analogy, it helps them to understand. It helps them to be able to make that transition to home. And so teachers do it. Teachers do it. They will let their class know, okay, when I'm doing this, you need to wait, or they give the kids some indicator of how to read their space, when it's okay
Mhm.
to approach their space. And so I encourage parents to do the same thing. That's an analogy the kids get, they understand it. And when you present it to them that way, you're also modeling for them how to do the same thing.
That was gonna be my next question. Have you suggested that for students or children that you work with, like being able to communicate to mom or dad, like, hey, I really don't want to play with my brother right now, but he keeps like bugging me. Like, encouraging that communication.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are the best examples, whether we want to be or not, we are for our children. And so the more we can do it, we create the environment, we create that safe space for them to be able to do it too. And so as much as we can model that, the more they'll observe it and pick up on it, and they'll begin to just mimic it. They do it anyway with what they see. So as much as we can be intentional about giving them a healthy example to model, absolutely, it creates that space for them to be able to do the same thing. And just as I was saying a second ago, be intentional, sit down intentionally and say, hey, this is what we would like to do. And give them
Mm.
permission. Give them permission to do it.
Oh, Leslie. I just need to work on my tone. I mean, because I'll do that sometimes. It's about to be like a Zoom session. But no, I will do that. I will communicate, mommy needs 5 minutes and then you have my attention, or mommy's, everybody gets their alone time. But my tone in the moment, I don't take those 10 seconds. I'll be like, wait, give me 5 minutes. They'd be like, give mommy 5 minutes.
Uh-huh. And that's just real, that's just life. But the way you come back, the way you bounce back, if you will, one thing I say to parents often, and I experience this myself, is one of the most healthy things you can do is apologize to your children. When you know that you've done something that wasn't quite right, it is great for your kids to know you're not perfect, you're not always right, you make mistakes. And when you model that for them, it gives them the grace, number one, to be forgiving, but also
Mhm.
to be able to admit when they've done the same thing. And so, when we may come off to our spouse or to our kids in a tone that we really didn't intend, it's okay to say, hey, I apologize. I didn't mean this. Ask for forgiveness and move on. I'm telling you, it really resets and it really helps the children um, to receive that with the right heart and posture, and they can then be in position to recognize that. They won't begin to internalize things and take them personally.
Yeah. Oh, that's really good. Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with apologizing. I think I might categorize things wrong, but and I think that's definitely opportunity for humility, for
Absolutely.
me to be humble, to serve like Christ,
Mhm.
not think of myself better. Yes, I'm a parent, but we're all made in the image of God, and I think that's yeah, I totally agree with that. I wanted to ask you, with you being a therapist, and you obviously have seen an increase in clients, and there are some people who are watching this who are in the counseling spectrum, or who are therapists. What encouragement can you give them during this time from what you've experienced since the spring?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mentioned to you earlier that I was talking to a colleague. I do that often. We're caretakers too, even in a different aspect because of what we do. And so we're always in this space where we're having to not only manage ourselves to be professional and available to our clients, um, and to a large number of them, oftentimes, we're also needing to manage ourselves where we can then be available and healthy for our own family. And
Mm.
so remember, give your own selves grace, practice self-care. One of the things that I was talking with a group of my peers about not long ago was creating that space even within our therapeutic sessions where you're still practicing self-care, which means that you don't have to put up with harmful um, detrimental behavior from clients, working with that in a therapeutic way where you yourself are not being sacrificed, if you will.
Mm.
So that's important for them to know, for all of us to know in this space, and take our own advice. It's okay for us to seek counsel as well. It's almost necessary.
Try, tested, and true.
Really can't give from an empty space, So we need to be in that space where we're taking care of ourselves, practicing self-care, getting appropriate supervision, whether it's formally or just peer-to-peer supervision, which we oftentimes do too.
That's really good. I swan one thing. Well, one, I just saw a quote or something like, you can't pour out of an empty vessel, which I think is something that I think we understand, but in
Hmm.
moments like this, personally, I don't realize when I'm empty.
Yes.
Till it's like, okay, mommy needs to go somewhere, or man,
Hmm.
it's not even mommy, Esther needs to go a minute. But I think just that's where the self-assessment would help. But
Hmm.
I always think about you and those who are in the therapy clinical spectrum, and even like social workers.
Absolutely.
Um, just like, man, how are they coping? Like, how are they doing? Because I know how I feel and what I share with or within my sessions. And then it's like, I'm sure they have their own stuff. So
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
some good wisdom.
Yeah, life doesn't stop for us just because of the roles that we're in and positions that we're in. We have some of the same concerns and issues that you all have. And so it is important that we recognize that and we're honest about it and we seek the additional support that we need so that we can be healthy for our own families, but also to be in this space to provide the counsel to our clients.
Good. So as we close out, and now I specifically just want to ask you, as a parent or a caretaker in this school year, what would be some indicators for you to be concerned about the mental or emotional health of your child? Because you kind of hit on what you were seeing from millennials and things like that, but for your kids as a parent, like what would be a thing where it's like, oh, I think I need additional help?
So you were going out a little bit. So are you asking from for the children, what would be
Yeah.
indicators?
Like if you're a parent and the school year is going on and you're noticing maybe certain behaviors that you didn't see before, like what would be some indications that something we may need to talk about something or I need another person on my team?
Okay, well, you just said it. You notice a change in behaviors. That's one indicator. Knowing your child and knowing the temperament of your child, which that may have shifted just a bit given this pandemic state that we're in. And so just being mindful of your child and your child's temperament. And again, communication is so key. We talked about that early on. Having an open dialogue with your children so that you can have an ongoing assessment mentally, you as the parent, mentally being able to assess where your child is just from everyday conversation. What kinds of things, are there themes in their conversation? Are you noticing that they have thoughts that are more negative or thoughts that seem to be more catastrophic? Being mindful too of what you expose your children to via television and social media, that kind of thing, so that they're not overly exposed to what's going on. That just tends to heighten their stress level and anxiety. So if you notice that your children are more easily distracted or just distracted in general, they're not really attentive to school. They may be a bit more oppositional or irritable, maybe even having some anger outbursts. The younger the children are, the less able they may be able to articulate how they're feeling and what they're experiencing. And so as parents, we really do need to be mindful of their behavioral changes. So if you notice that they're not sleeping as well, or they're having hesitation or reservation about wanting to transition for bed, things like that, they're not eating as much, or they're more clingy than they were before. All you with children, it is more behavioral changes that you'll see. And so as parents, being mindful of that, because the children may not be able to articulate or they may not even be aware that that's what they're doing. But if we're watchful and we're paying attention to what we're seeing, then we may be the ones that need to initiate the conversation to start the dialogue. And then they can say yes. I'll give you a practical example.
Mm-hmm.
My son was 3 when he was 3, and his father and I were not together, and his father had moved away several states away, so he was not accustomed to seeing his dad as much as he used to. And I just observed that he'd become more irritable, just started having these little behavioral issues that he wasn't having before. And so I was talking with him one day, as we do in the evening, and I asked him one day, I said, "Do you miss your dad?" And oh my God, the waterfall just, he started, and he just started crying. And he hadn't made that connection per se to be able to articulate it to me. But when I said it, it resonated with him. And so that opened up for me to be able to, just share with him more. And his dad and I were more intentional about, well, there wasn't FaceTime back then, but was more intentional about just the phone calls and the conversations and the communications. And so as parents, we may be the ones, and probably are the ones, that are going to notice those things and then start the dialogue, open up the conversation for them to be able to share.
That is so good. And I feel like for those who are Christians or believers, the Holy Spirit can really help us with that because it can get busy.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
It can get busy, and I know we have four, and that's one thing. Like E and I have been trying to be like, okay, we have four, but they're not grouped together. They're all different. But just in the midst of life, it's like, wait a minute. I wasn't expecting him to say that, or why is she doing that? Like, Holy Spirit can really just be like, I need you to stop and listen to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If we allow it. And then being open to like our friends and peers who may not be believers or Christian, be like, my child has been doing this or saying this. And I know me, I'm gonna be like, well, let me think about what Leslie said. Did you watch Leslie's interview on the
Oh, you are much equipped, young lady, with such wisdom yourself.
Yeah, I do. I tend to do like ask questions. And I mean, that goes back to what you said about giving yourselves grace and asking for help. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I totally can see that applying in those situations with our kids. So, Leslie, I feel like I need to invite you back. Every person that I've had on this platform, it's been like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to keep a time limit, but I just want to keep going.
Oh, I understand. I feel the same way on my platform a lot of the times too.
It's so good. Well, in closing, could you tell us how we can get in contact with you, websites, anything you would like to share with us?
Yes. So you can reach me via my website, which is my name, www.leslie, Leslie hardy.com. All of my contact information is there. You can also connect with me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, which I'm working on that, LinkedIn and Twitter, but I'm mainly on Facebook and Instagram right now. So yeah, they can reach out to me any of those places, and I would be glad to connect with them.
I know one question people are going to ask is she taking new clients?
Well, it depends on how quickly they reach out. Yes, I am. I am. And if I am at capacity for some reason, I would love to refer you to a colleague that I think would take good care of you.
Well, there you go, folks. You heard that? Now go blow her up, all her stuff up. But no, I really do encourage everyone to go to Leslie's website. You will be able to see her amazing books that she has written, as well as other resources that she has available. For those of you, again, if you want to rewatch this, make sure you hit that subscribe button at the bottom if you're on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast platforms, we're on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. So make sure you go ahead and subscribe there as well. If you follow us, we're on Instagram, Life with Gains Podcast, Facebook, Life with Gains. I'm at Life with _Esther on Instagram. And my husband Emmanuel is at Life with _Emmanuel. So we thank you guys for tuning in again. Leslie, thank you so much. And we will see you all the next time. Bye.
Thank you.